Krishna Prachaya Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Arhate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvashesha Kanyavari Ashtatare Satarine Namaste Arhate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvashesha Kanyavari Atyachari Satarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Pallava Girivardhari, Gopi Jana Pallava Gopi Jana Pallava Girivardhari, Gopi Jana Pallava Girivardhari, Yashodanandana 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 Yamuna Tira Tira Yamuna Tira Jaya Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Shtatar Satishresi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Vedanta Koitavai Sivindaki ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Shri Mayapur Dham ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki Ganga Maya ki Jamuna Maya ki Tulasi Deva ki Bhakti Deva ki Samaveta Bhaktavinda ki Lord Chaitanya's Harinama Sankirtanam ki Brihat Madanga ki Srila Prabhupada ki Shri Gaurnitai ki Hare Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Gaur Premanandi. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivasesha Sanyavari Pastichade Shatarin Om Gyana Timrandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurnatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Uttapata Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shri Radha Krishna Vedan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchaka Pucharubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna Jai Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome this evening, this morning, afternoon, whatever it is for you. And thank you for joining us today. And this Saturday morning, we're going to try to continue the, recontinue the discussion on the Sikshamrita, the 8 prayers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at least on Saturday. During the week we can't say, but Saturdays. So we've covered 2 verses, and today we're planning to look into the 3rd verse, perhaps the most chanted of all the verses of Siksastakam is the 3rd verse. And we'll start looking into today. I'm 100% sure, maybe almost, nothing's 100% sure in this regard, but more or less sure that this will be going over at least 2 classes, because there's every word, every sentence, every verse is very important. But this verse particularly is very, very significant, even in our practical, not just in our understanding of the process of devotional service and the ultimate conclusion of knowledge or of devotional service, but also in terms of our practical application of the primary process of devotional service in the form of Nam-Sankirtan. So we're going to probably cover this over two sessions, I'd imagine. And I'm not as prepared as, we can never be as prepared as we need to be, but we have some little something ready. So I'm going to begin by reading something from the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and as we're going to be covering the third verse of Chaitanya of Siksastakam, unfortunately, I'm very sorry, I inattentively didn't ask Vasikananda Prabhu to put this, to share this, but I think many of you are familiar with these verses anyway. I think so. So we're going to start with the section in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the Antya Lila, chapter 20, and it is verse number 20 also. 20, Antya Lila, chapter 20, verse number 20. So if you do have, or if you do want to follow, just a few verses we're going to read, then we're going to hopefully start to discuss more or read more about the subject matter. So this is the text number 20. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued. Lord Chaitanya is now revealing to the world the Siksastakam prayers. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "O Swarup Damodar Goswami and Ramananda Roy, hear from me the symptoms of how one should chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra to awaken very easily one's dormant love for Krishna." And so we see here Lord Chaitanya is with his most intimate of all intimate associates, Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy, and he's talking about the chanting of the holy names. And then he quotes this verse, text number 3, which I don't know if it's going to come on the screen, but maybe not. Hopefully you've heard it before. Trnad api Sunicena taroriva sahishnuna amanina manadenu kirtaniya sada harihi. There it is. So we can repeat it together. Trnad api Sunicena taroriva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sada harihi. And we can go on to the synonyms, word for word meanings of this verse. Sometimes we use the word Turor api sahishna, has the same basic meaning. So word for word, Trnad api, that downtrodden grass. Sunicena, being lower. Toroho, than a tree. Eva, like. Sahishnuna, with tolerance. Amanina, without being puffed up by false pride. Manadena, giving respect to all. Kirtaniyaha, to be chanted. Sada, always. Harihi, the holy name of the Lord. Translation. There is no purport in this particular section, but there are, throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are purports related to this verse and verses related to it. Practically speaking, we could say the message of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the entire message of Chaitanya Charitamrita is to apply understanding the teachings of Siksastakam in our lives. we know that Lord Chaitanya's teachings cover the entire subject of knowledge. When we say knowledge, we mean knowledge in terms of real knowledge, in terms of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. The Siksastakam prayers cover these three topics very thoroughly, especially the topic of Sambandha Gyan. But throughout the whole of these verses, all of these three subject matters of transcendental spiritual life are covered in the Siksastakam prayers. They incorporate the entire essence of the practical application of Abhideya or devotional practices by emphasizing the most essential of our devotional practices, the chanting of the holy name of Krishna, for which all other devotional practices are meant to facilitate. They are indeed important, but ultimately, all of our devotional practices, particularly in this age, are to support, to facilitate the cultivation of pure chanting of the holy name. And this verse, text number 3, which we're reading at the moment, is a key, or say, a pivotal verse from just chanting Hare Krishna to actually progressing to the higher stage or the essential purpose of our chanting Hare Krishna. This is a key verse. We'll hear more about that in a minute. So the translation of this verse: one who thinks himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than the tree, and who does not expect personal honor, but is always prepared to give respect, to give all respect to others, can very easily chant the holy name of the Lord. It's almost like a bit of a, you could see it as a dilemma. The verse itself is, in one sense, clear, but in another sense, you could say, wait, but these qualities are surely to be evoked or evolved or awakened by chanting the holy name of Krishna. But unless one has these qualities, how can we really chant the holy name of Krishna? So we'll be touching on that a little bit. The same with devotional service. When a living entity is in this conditional world, how can we practice devotional service? It's a subject matter. It's an activity which is beyond the modes of nature. It's transcendental. We're caught in a cycle of karmic action and reaction. Within that, there may be, relatively speaking, a certain amount of piety and impiety there. But to literally be able to engage in devotional service in this conditional world, in one sense, is somewhat contradictory. But it's when that transcendence enters within the material world and offers bhakti. And Bhakti Devi offers her association to the conditioned soul. And that is our only connection, our only opportunity, we could say, to associate with Bhakti Devi. We say that we're performing devotional service, which is obviously not untrue, but it's not complete in one sense either. Actually, what's happening is we're getting the opportunity to associate with Bhakti Devi. And by her association, the awakening of her actual dormant attraction towards Krishna may take place. Otherwise it won't take place. We may have some perverted understandings, but Sambandha Gyan, the real understanding of our relationship with Krishna, will not awaken. And similarly with chanting the holy name of Krishna, the same principle is there. To cultivate the pure chanting of the holy name. Anyone can chant, which is good. It also is good. And it will have an effect, but it may take a long time. The secret is to associate with those who are actually pure bhaktas, pure devotees of the Lord in our chanting of the holy name. And we'll hear a little bit how we can associate with pure devotees in our particular situation that we're in. Most of you are living a distance from the temple, maybe married with children, busy with some occupation. No time, often is the answer we give. No time, too busy. And sometimes the chanting of the holy name is, we call mechanical. Mechanical means it just kind of somehow or other goes on without very much attention or seriously taking advantage of that association. It's not just Bhakti Devi in this case, but it's the worshipable Lord Bhakti Devi, Krishna himself, as well as Srimati Radharani, who are appearing in this Mahamantra. But to have let's say, the eligibility to associate, everyone's got a degree of eligibility, but the real eligibility to associate is in this particular verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita spoken by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we're just going to read the next verse, verse 8. We stand a little bit on this one. One who thinks himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than a tree. Sorry, I'm still back on the one previous one. Anyway, I'll finish it. And who does not expect personal honor, but is always prepared to give all respect to others, can very easily chant the holy name of the Lord. And text 22, in the translation of 22, these are the symptoms of one who chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Although he is very exalted, he thinks himself lower than the grass on the ground, and like a tree, he tolerates everything in two ways. It's interesting because here we see that one who chants, these are the symptoms of one who chants. We may be chanting, but we may not be manifesting these symptoms always. Maybe not much at all. Maybe we think we are, we're not really. Manifesting, these are spontaneous manifestation. It's not just an artificial imposition in our behavior, although there may be an element of that in the preliminary stages of devotional service in order to protect us from being too offensive. But it's not the real spontaneous symptoms which are being mentioned here in this verse. It's automatic, but one who is actually chanting the holy name has these symptoms. It's again, this situation of being a little contradictory, maybe there, it's not really there, but it may seem to be. But these are the actual symptoms of one who really chants the holy name. It's not just something we do in our spare time, or something to keep up the numbers, or something just to keep our vow. These are all stages, and they're all to be encouraged at certain stages, but they're not the goals. They're just, stages to help us to reach the goal. But if we stay on the stage and we don't take to the necessary, let's say, method to move towards the actual goal, we can stay on that stage for a long time. Mechanical chanting in the Harinam Chintamani, you can read many things, but one thing is there, it's equated with inattentive chanting or offensive chanting. Mechanical chanting. It just goes on, but it's not with let's say, the favorable attitude in the service of the holy name. We're not evoking a deep affection or attraction through our chanting necessarily. We're dutifully going about our whatever, japa or whatever it is we're doing, maybe to some degree at least. Maybe not as much as we could. And even that is just an imposition in a sense that we're trying to hear and chant. We're trying to, mechanically. It's not with affection. It may not even be with sambandha. We have some sambandha where we're not chanting with that in mind. Our mind is wandering to all sorts of other things, not fully aware that we're associating with Krishna, with Radha and Krishna, not fully aware that this is the Supreme Lord with all of his opulences personally offering his association to us. It's just something which we do and we feel good about it. Maybe we feel a bit good afterwards or whatever. But then again, we often go back to our normal kind of interaction, our normal behavior. And it takes a little time, there's no doubt about that. But there are ways of speeding this up. There are ways of becoming a little bit more, let's say, attentive, aware of what's going on here. And it's not just an imposition, although hearing about, one of the processes is hearing about those who are on this platform. Such personalities as Haridas Thakur, for instance, is a Namacharya. And Prabhupada many times says we should chant following in the footsteps of Namacharya Haridas Thakur. And in his life we see so much, well, probably the best example in this regards of the manifestation of these symptoms that, at least it comes to mind, every pure devotee is, but this was his particular service in Lord. We can't afford the electricity here, so we have turned the electricity off every now and again to save energy, I think. Sure. Let's see, Krishna, sorry about this unexpected event. Actually, we just had a power cut for some time there. Well, I hope you're all feeling very tolerant. You have to practice tolerance and humility here. So it's a good reminder that we're not the controllers. We think everything's fine. But one day there's going to be a power cut, huh? More than just an electric power cut. There's going to be a power cut in a very, you could say, connections with this world. And we all have to leave what we think is ours, and me, and this and that. So we'll carry on if we can, and I'm not expecting that Janananda Prabhu is going to be able to put it up on the screen, but we're going to text 23, where there's a brief description of the nature of these symptoms, 22 and 23, of humility, lower than the grass on the ground. And like a tree, he tolerates everything in two ways. So, lower than the grass on the ground. This can be seen in the sense of a devotee, how they consider themselves, everyone else is more significant than me. There's another aspect to this humility, is that as the straw on the street, it doesn't protest, no doubt. But when you step on the straw may come back up again. But a devotee doesn't. He remains forever in that humble position. He doesn't, jump back as such in terms of, answering back or whatever it may be. He's very, very humble. Like that, he accepts this as Krishna's mercy on him or them. And the same thing with tolerance. Like we see in the case of Haridas Thakur, how he was so tolerant of, in the case when he was beaten in the marketplaces, for instance, how tolerant he is. Or Jesus, so tolerant. And tolerate in two ways, and that's mentioned in text 23. When a tree is cut down, it does not protest, and even when drying up, does not ask anyone for water. It just tolerates whatever comes its way. And there's a big difference between the tolerance of a pure devotee. The next verse, text 24, just finish this and we'll discuss the pure devotee. The tree delivers its fruits, flowers, and whatever it possesses to anyone and everyone. It tolerates scorching heat and torrents of rain, yet it still gives shelter to others. Although a Vaishnava is the most exalted person, he is prideless and gives all respect to everyone, knowing everyone to be the resting place of Krishna. We're going on, you could say, to the next. In this verse, there are 4 main points. One is humility, one is tolerance, one is pridelessness, and one is compassion or giving respect to others. So in this verse here, we're hearing about tolerance. How a devotee tolerates? Well, they understand, they have sambandha, they have this understanding, even if it's not a full realization. One can act on understanding. That's why we have Guru Shastra, Sadhu, scriptures. The understanding becomes a realization by application in the proper way, applying the sambandha in the right time, place, and circumstance. It may not be the same in every particular situation, but in principle is there. Applying what we understand, knowledge, sambandha gyan, in our lives in the right way, evolves or develops. The practice then of abhideya evolves in realizations at different stages of our progress. So this tolerance we can remember, for instance, by remembering Haridas Thakur, by remembering Srila Prabhupada, by remembering any great devotees who underwent so much, you could say, challenge in their devotional services, presenting Krishna consciousness to the world. And we're speaking from the point of view of those in this world. There's another level of tolerance, there's another level of humility on a higher level, you could say. But at the level we're on, they are demonstrating the nature or the symptoms, the effects of practicing pure devotional service. And when we hear about them, it helps us to also become desirous, at least awakens a desire within us to cultivate this mood, to cultivate the practice which evolves in the natural awakening of the mood or the symptoms of pure devotional service. The important thing is the association of devotees. If we want to cultivate pure devotional service, ultimately prayojana or love of Godhead, in the association of devotees, just the independent material, independent execution of sadhana can only go so far. We may get freed of sinful reactions, but such independent endeavors will not lead to prema. They will not lead to love of Godhead. It's only when we get the association of the Lord's pure devotees, who are the repositories of pure bhakti or bhakti devi, that we can get this opportunity. This is the key, you can say, in our cultivation of devotional service, be it this service or that service. It's under the shelter of the divine energy. Now, Prabhupada translates the Hare Krishna mantra in a sense like this. Our prayer is, my dear Lord Krishna, please engage me, free me from being engaged by the external energy, and please engage me, or may I be engaged in the service of you in the internal energy. Everyone's serving Krishna, but most people in the mode of ignorance, they don't realize it. They're not thinking that they're serving Krishna at all, but nothing is really separate from Krishna in reality. It's just wrongly, in the wrong understanding, in the wrong way. We have to see how we can serve Krishna in the right way. So only those who know, only those who have, are living. They're not just theorizing, they're living it. It's nice we can theorize, that may also be certain value for sure, and it's certainly a stage which we're on. But ultimately we have to hear from one who is a realized soul, one who has no more influence of the modes of nature and not directing their activities. They're directed by love for Krishna. So when we follow their path, we follow in their footsteps, that leads us on the path towards pure devotional service. We may not be on that path. We may only have some faith. It may not even be very strong. We have some faith, maybe some vague sambandha gyan, or whatever it is, some kind of understanding. At least we've accepted it with faith. We haven't realized it. And we're willing to apply abhideya. We're willing to apply the process of devotional service. That willingness must be there. And what is the essence that was like in the Bhagavad Gita? Simple, keep it simple. And by Tadvidis Panipatina, Pariprashnena, saving. So that's devotional service submissive. When this mood of faith comes to a point where I don't know, please tell me what to do. When our faith grows like this, then we become more eligible then to receive more, you can say mercy if you want to put it in a simple terminology, more reciprocation from the Lord in the form that we suddenly get some realizations. Our tendency from the conditional point of view is we want to impose our perspective on the platform of devotional service. As a child likes to, impose their own very immature idea of how things they are on the situation. And to a certain extent, the parents may let them do it because they'll throw a tantrum if you don't let them do it. And then they realize that wasn't a very good idea. But they won't be able to admit it because, the false ego is sometimes very big, but they realize that they can't do that again. Maybe I should listen a bit better next time to advice or whatever it is, or guidance. So gradually, we may wake up from our independent, our egotistical ideas of who we are or how things should be done and so on and so forth. We're not on the spontaneous platform. We're on the conditional platform. There are conditions. So similarly in the execution of devotional service, there are conditions. Everyone can chant, but what the result of everyone's chanting is will not necessarily be the same. Everyone will get benefit, but what that benefit is may manifest to smaller or greater degrees depending on our relationship with the holy name. And the relationship, just in simple dealings, if you want a relationship with someone, generally you need to be introduced by somebody who does have a relationship with them. Normal, maybe exceptions, but that's the normal case. We ask somebody, can you introduce me to so-and-so? Or can you tell me about so-and-so? You know them well, please tell me something. I like that. And similarly in relationship with Krishna. But still we think we're the proprietor, the possessor of the holy name, we're the possessor of devotional service, we're the possessor of a so-called position in the association of devotees, etc. These are immature, childlike perspectives of devotional service, which take time to kind of let go of and realize this is a little misunderstanding. It's not pure sambandha or pure understanding, but actually, we're just getting the opportunity by the mercy of the Lord to associate with Bhakti Devi, who's come in this merciful form. She doesn't reveal herself only through the pure devotees of the Lord. Pure devotees of the Lord, they carry love of Krishna in their heart. Only they can actually give us this opportunity. And how we associate. Now you're stuck there in New Zealand, Fiji, Australia, Malaysia, Philippines, India, somewhere in Europe or America. I don't know where the heck you are, but wherever you are, we're all kind of stuck in these little boxes all over the world. And maybe with a lockdown, is even more restricted in terms of getting the external association of aspiring devotees, etc., or inspiring, if there's a bit more advanced, devotees of the Lord. And that's maybe even restricted. We have internet, we have other methods of communication, no doubt, but it's not quite the same as the physical contact. We generally understand that. Is Krishna's mercy, he's allowing it to become more and more available. But the physical contact of a pure devotee is not so easy. So how do we associate? The real essence, even physical, whether it's online, whether it's some other method of associating, the essence of it is that we follow in their footsteps. And the same thing applies to chanting the holy names. So the pure devotees of the Lord, they don't just reveal the Yuga Dharma. They don't just reveal the Sankirtan movement to the world, which they certainly do as the essential thing. Without that, there's nothing to practice. So they reveal this, it's also sambandha, this knowledge. And because they're imbued with love of Krishna, it's very powerful and has a powerful effect on those who come in contact. But they also give, and the essential thing is they give the method, the process of how we can cultivate the service of the holy name, the practice of chanting Hare Krishna. They give the practice. They don't just say, chant Hare Krishna. In the beginning, they do. Just chant Hare Krishna. I remember the first time in England when I was, first time I ever visited a temple in Bury Place in London. It was, what's the date today? A little bit over 49 years ago. Maybe it was in September. I think it was the end or middle, probably the middle of September 71. First time, or maybe somewhere in September. It might have been beginning, middle, or end. I can't remember. But sometime in September 71, first time I ever visited Hare Krishna temple. I'd read some magazines, but I'd never been to a temple. So I visited the temple in Bury Place, and after a long day of various interactions and experiences, which is a story in itself, I was engaged. One devotee named Janananda Prabhu, not from Melbourne. Janananda Prabhu was the temple president, an American devotee, one of the first disciples of Prabhupada. He was in England. He was the temple president. And he was also organizing Spiritual Sky to raise some money. He would do anything. Temple president would do everything and anything was required. Clean the temple, go on Hari now, do the arti, cook the lunch, do the spirit, manage Spiritual Sky, everything and anything, whatever was required. Everyone did whatever you were asked to do, whatever was needed. It was something called Sadhana Bhakti. Maybe you've heard of it. Devotional service. It's supposed to be Hoitikiya Pratiyatani. We read these things anyway. They're nice to read. But in those days, it was like that. So everyone else was on Sankirtan or cooking or something. So I was there, and he asked me if I could help him with the Spiritual Sky. He had some orders to fulfill, to send out incense to various shops in London to try to get a little bit of money. So to maintain the temple. And so I said, okay, sure. I'll do what if you want, I'll help you. So he took me upstairs to a little tiny room where we were packing incense, 5, 10, 15, 20 into the packet, doing Spiritual Sky incense. It was it was a very wonderful experience, to be honest. But there was one other devotee there, there was an actual devotee there, or sitting there, kind of with us. Janananda went to do something else. He just was trying to get people to help. So there were 2 other hippies and this one devotee. I don't know if he was initiated or not. I have no idea. I know he was dark-skinned. That's all I know. And I guess he was preaching to us. I couldn't really say what he was doing, but he was saying something, preaching, I guess. And I would never been to a temple before. I don't know if the other 2 had ever been to a temple before either. No idea. But he was talking and he just kept, he was like going around, we call it a record, and it gets stuck. It just says the same thing over and over again. All he talked about was the chanting of Hare Krishna. But he didn't talk about, much about the, let's say, the understanding of the chant, Sambandha or Nam Tattva. He didn't talk much about that. He talked mainly about the fact that that means the 3 of us, I'd never been to the temple before. They said that the most important thing you have to understand is you have to avoid offenses while you chant Hare Krishna. I didn't know I just couldn't understand where he was at, because, I chanted a bit here and there, but I wasn't chanting Hare Krishna per se. And it's like you start off, first of all, you must avoid the offenses while you chant Hare Krishna. First thing someone preaches to you. The first thing anyone ever preached to me was this. It's kind of weird. So, because we weren't even convinced to chant, it wasn't like something we were doing. Maybe once in a while, amongst other things, Hare Krishna would come up. But we weren't practicing. I don't know, the other 2, maybe they were, but I don't think so. I never saw them again. It's kind of weird, like this. But that's not how it starts. We start just anybody, just chant and be happy. It's where there are no hard and fast rules in chanting. Everyone can chant. Doesn't matter where we are, who we are, what we are. Anyone's eligible, anyone's offered the opportunity to chant, even in jest, even in whatever their reasons may be. Everyone gets the benefit, but what benefit they get is this opportunity to chant again, to come into the association and to gradually develop some understanding of what is this all about. It's not just a nice mantra that we sing to be peaceful or free, even on the stage, a little bit Sambandhagyan, freeing us from reactions to our sins. It's there, but this is not the real essence of it. Maybe in the beginning, or to, whatever, feel more the mode of goodness and get free of sufferings and whatever it may be. These things may be there, but it's not the real point. So one doesn't preach the glories of the holy name to a person whose faith is not yet developed. One may get them to chant, but as the faith grows, step by step, by chanting, by associating it to those, because Krishna gives that little opportunity. You said Hare Krishna, now I give you a chance again. And if you take the next chance, you get another chance, step by step. Again, so Sukriti leads to slow progress in devotional service, a little bit more again. Sukriti, another Bhakti Mukha Sukriti, gradually growing unknowingly, but gradually developing a little attraction to something about devotional service. So the person gradually becomes more and more, let's say, interested in the practice, not just in the externals, but in the practical application of service to the holy name. The same could be applied to any subject matter to a certain degree in this world also. It gradually develops by association and then application. You gradually become attracted to a food or music or a place or an activity, whatever it may be, over time. Or you may be tossed in the material world, the world of duality. But by association or by time, you develop a relationship with that particular thing. So similarly with chanting Hare Krishna, we may develop a relationship. The relationship may still be, let's say, a secondary relationship. I found that if I chant Hare Krishna, I can, my sleep is better, or my digestion improves, or people like me more, or whatever it is. Some secondary thing may be there, conditional reasons. It's not unconditional, and it's certainly not pure, but it's the start. So we start, and in the association of those, and it means following the process, just like Srila Prabhupada gave us a process for chanting Hare Krishna. Many things, you could go on for months talking about these things, literally, details. But in principle, he gave us a process. And we're going to hear a little bit about some of those things in a minute or two, maybe the way we're going up to more than a minute or two. But we're hearing about them shortly. Process, which is how, because it's coming from Krishna through the Parampara, through our immediate connection with the Parampara, you put your plug in there, and slowly the instrument, we slowly start warming up. We slowly start warming. It may not immediately, the fire may not immediately warm up. It takes time. But if we keep plugged in and we follow the process, then gradually the effect will be there. So this pretty important subject matter. If we want, unless we want to remain conditional devotees or whatever you want to call it, conditional, let's put it, lifetime after lifetime or for a long time, and then even in our movement, all the problems are based on the fact that we're still imposing our conditional perspective on what's right and wrong in the situations we find ourselves in. Unless our hearts become purified, we'll continue to see it like that. It's not just a mechanical boom, 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 boom. But we have to also be connected to the pure devotee, chanting according to their guideline, according to their direction. Then Krishna's pleased because we're actually serving Bhakti Devi in her manifest form as a pure devotee of the Lord. We'll read one or two more verses which are not on there. So a devotee, these symptoms, by hearing about these pure devotees, it awakens. It's a service in itself to hear about the pure devotees, to hear from the pure devotees, to apply what we hear from the pure devotees, to try to follow in their footsteps. This is, we may imitate, we may run before we walk. In the beginning, we try to be more than what we are, but gradually we learn our lessons, and follow that which is appropriate according to our level of maturity in devotional service. And this way we can progress, learning lesson after lesson after lesson. It's very wonderful. It's very enlivening. It's very, very pleasing, actually. And it's very preaching, showing people how they can serve at any stage, no matter what stage we're on. Everyone has a certain, whatever stage we're on, everyone has some eligibility to practice devotional service. Like the Prabhupada says here, it tolerates heat, scorching heat and torrents of rain. Still it gives shelter to others. The pure devotee, no matter what, it's like a loving mother, a loving father. The child may beat the father, beat the mother, bite the mother, scream at the mother, kick the father, kick the mother, whatever. The parents tolerate. They love the child. They're just thinking how to help this child. You know, the child is rebellious, it seems. The parents are always like that. They tolerate and they still try to give their love and their guidance. So the pure Bhakti Devi is like that. We're all like, immature kids on the path practically, with all of our other attachments and our priorities and our impressions and our emotions and, whatever it is, our sentiments, being controlled by anger. If you don't, we get angry with each other sometimes, over what? Over what? Because we haven't understood what. We're thinking, this is my priority, I'm important, I'm this body, this is me, how dare you offend me? We go on and on sometimes. You can't reason. When a person's intoxicated like that, sometimes you have to let the storm calm down. You can't stop it. There's no point. It just gets more furious if you try. It takes time, patience, tolerance, humility. Yes, yes, you're right. Whatever it is, and continue showing respect. But sooner or later, we have to wake up and grow up if we want to progress in spiritual life. Realize that maybe I'm not the center of the universe. Maybe something has to start within, and by slow association, maybe quick, it can happen like this, but usually it takes time. Association of us, following the practice, the instruction how to practice, not just practice. Yes, Prabhu, yes. Chant Hare Krishna, go back to Godhead. Okay, that's it, I'm off. And you have to, that can be true, but there's many, rules and regulations, if you want to call it that. There are many guidelines. There are many different ways. We have to cultivate pure chanting, not just the chanting, but the pure chanting. If we actually want to do genuine service, if we actually want to awaken our love for Krishna. But because we're connected, as long as we stay connected to the pure devotee and do our best to follow their guidelines, then one can actually progress in spiritual life. So let's read a little bit more and let's see where we are. Although a Vaishnava is the most exalted person, text 25, he is the most exalted. He is prideless and gives all respect to everyone, knowing everyone to be the resting place of Krishna. So these like sutras. Sutras means specific statements which need to be expanded, of course, but they give the essence of the whole, nature or the subject matter. Sutras, just like in the previous one, more tolerant, because a devotee doesn't just tolerate materially. The tree tolerates, but and then is still willing to give its leaves, branches, whatever, trunks, roots, everything. But it tolerates. It doesn't have conscious awareness to reciprocate more than that. But a pure devotee does. A pure devotee is, although one may be tormenting a pure devotee of the Lord, a pure devotee is simply showering, like Haridas was showering his mercy upon the tormentors, the Muslim soldiers or whatever they were who were trying to kill him. He was showering his love and mercy upon them. Please deliver them, my Lord. Please be merciful to them, my Lord. He felt no animosity of any kind, not a drop, not even a thought. These rascals, I hope they get the results of their work, that they get punished. And some people may think like that, but that's pure devotee never entertains such a thought. He's just thinking, oh Lord, please have mercy on these poor souls. Even though they're trying to kill you, this is how a pure devotee thinks. We may sometimes get a glimpse of this, but not necessarily always. But the pure devotee is always in this mood, this transcendental tolerance. Because why? Because he's seeing, as this verse says here, everyone is a resting place of Krishna. Because Krishna is in everyone's, right next to the soul. The soul of the soul, he's there. It's not just a wayward soul. When we're angry at a living entity, we're angry at Krishna. We're getting angry at Krishna. They're part and parcel of Krishna, however fallen they may be. The devotee doesn't become angry at the person. He may become angry at the ignorance which is covering them and the fact that they're identifying with it, not the person. I hate this person. I don't, it's the pure devotee feels compassion that the person is covered in such a way, causing their own distress or whatever, bondage. And the pure devotee is compassionate, full of compassion for all living entities, no matter how fallen they are. He simply wishes the welfare of all, just like Vasudeva Datta was willing to, just my Lord, please deliver all living entities. Let me take all of their reactions. Let me suffer eternally. Please, may they go back to Godhead to bring pleasure to you. He just wants to see Krishna's pleasure, the pure devotee. It's like a father, has many children, and you may like or not like, but the father likes all the children. And if you want to please the father, you have to bear that in mind. Even though you may not like them, if you disrespect them or you're angry to them, you're going to be disrespecting the father. How to please the father? And the father is not pleased when he sees his children being mistreated, or not pleased when he sees them suffer. So if we want to please the father, whoever we are, whether we're one of the siblings or not, one would try to, behave in a way which would be appropriate in dealing with his children. So the pure devotee is like this. He's compassion. He only thinks of the welfare. It's not like, I hate these people because externally they're doing this. We sometimes hear this, a group of humans. I hate these ones, I like these ones. I hate those ones. I like this guy. I hate that guy. It means we're still on the conditional or materialistic platform. We're not actually, we haven't understood Sambandha Gyan. We're still imposing our own ignorance and calling it knowledge, relativity. One has to use common sense, of course, in dealing with literal situations, but in the heart of hearts, one who has understood Sambandha Gyan never entertains such thoughts. Never. He may describe the misbehavior of others, but he never has a hatred. As Jesus said, hate the sin, not the sinner. He never has any other, only thoughts of how to help others. If you can't help, you may avoid. But the mood is how to help, not how to, condemn. That's the last thing on a devotee's mind. There may be some seemingly exceptions, but even that seeming expression of condemnation, maybe go to hell or something, is only for their benefit. The last resort, you could say. It's not a general thing. And it's not their actual heart as to how to awaken Krishna consciousness in everyone's heart. How to do it, how to bring people to Krishna. It's their mood. So they're very respectful to all, because knowing every living entity is the part and parcel, the part and parcel of Krishna. It means their part is like your own body, part and parcel of your own body. If you say, I like you, but I don't like your finger, just put your finger out there. I'm just going to cut it off. Hey, what the hell are you doing? I don't like your finger. But that's my finger. I don't like it. It's not going to be very impressive if you cut a person's finger off. If you pull out their hair because you don't like their hair or something. It's part and parcel of their body. You have to, if you respect the whole, you have to respect the part also. One without the other doesn't work. And then, if one chants the holy name, text number 26, if one chants the holy name of Lord Krishna in this manner, he will certainly awaken his dormant love for Krishna's lotus feet. Amazing, eh? In this manner, if we chant, we will awaken. This is the goal of our movement, isn't it? To awaken our dormant love for Krishna. We heard that. This is the purpose of our movement. So how important this is, this subject matter. And it could apply to any kind of devotional practice, but specifically the chanting of the holy name, because this is the form of Krishna who has appeared in this age of Kali as the Yuga Dharma in this age of Kali is Harinam. Kali Kalera, Yuga Dharma, Harinam Yuga Dharma in this age of Kali. There's no other way. We'll read that next time. Time is passing by. We haven't started on the next subject. We'll read that next week. Further follow to this, and in terms of the holy name, is the only means. The only means is not a question of choose what you like. It's the only means in this age of Kali. Harinama, 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 Eva. There is no other way. No other way. So it's a good idea to follow the way. Someone gives us directions. I don't like that way. I like the goal. Yeah, sounds good. I think I'll make my own path. Well, it'll take a long time, maybe. But that isn't even someone's own path, by the way. That's the path given by the Vedas. Only after following that path, eventually, personal path, or this path or that path, one may eventually, by the grace of Krishna, come to that realization. But it's very, very rare. Very, very rare. It's possible, but rare. But that's also Krishna's path. It's not that we're independent of that. He's giving the directions on that path too. It's a slow path. So primarily, we're talking about the path given by Lord Chaitanya, which is the practical application or practical path leading to Sarvadharma Manmana Bhavam Bhakto, which Krishna ends the Bhagavad Gita with. The culmination of all the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, to surrender unto me completely, absorb yourself always in me, etc., completely free of any other attachment, affection, or whatever it is. So Lord Chaitanya has given the practical process whereby one can achieve the goal of Bhagavad Gita and much, much more. Krishna doesn't talk much beyond that. He's giving Sambandha Gyan and Abhideya mainly within the realm of this conditional life which we're in, different practices to release us from the three modes of nature. But the actual practice of pure loving devotional service is only hinted or mentioned in some symptomatic ways in the Bhagavad Gita, but not very extensively. Srimad Bhagavatam goes into an extension or expansion of this subject matter. What is pure devotional service? And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see that pure devotional service in a practically living example of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, who give the world the opportunity to follow that practical application of devotional service, pure devotional service. So this one or two more verses, and we'll finish. Text number 27. As Lord Chaitanya spoke in this way, his humility increased, and he began praying to Krishna that he could discharge pure devotional services. Another important point, another aspect of humility. I do it my way. I don't need to anyone else. I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. Realization is given by Krishna. When he's pleased, when he chooses someone who has the right attitude, then he bestows on that devotee whatever, the next stage of realization, up to the highest level of realization. It comes from Krishna. And here is humility. The devotee is taking shelter. Understand that on my own, what can I do? I'm insignificant, I'm tiny, I've fallen, whatever he thinks. but ultimately he's taking shout at Krishna. Do as you like with me. Okay, that comes a bit later. At this stage we're here, please, discharge, which verse we are on here, 27. In humility increasingly began praying to Krishna that he could discharge pure devotional service. So the devotee's desire is pure desire. The desire may be mixed though, but the desire is awakening. The devotee wants to engage in pure devotional service, not mixed, not Mishra Bhakti, but pure devotional service. Manya Bhakti, pure, unalloyed devotional service. Now, again, it may not be with full realization, but it's a practice of pure devotional service where one is following sincerely the instructions of the pure devotee of the Lord. Again, by the mercy of Krishna, we can come freed of whatever obstacles, whatever interference is there in the practice of our devotion. So the devotee prays to Krishna and that they please remove these obstacles on my path. May I also practice pure devotional service. So this humility is there in this sense too, because only by your mercy will this be possible. And the last verse we're going to read this morning, text number 28. Wherever there's a relationship of love of God, its natural symptom is that the devotee does not think himself a devotee. Instead, he always thinks that he has not even a drop of love for Krishna. Not a drop. This is the natural. Prabhupada writes here, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna Das Kaviraj, whoever it is, it's attested this verse is spoken maybe by Lord Chaitanya, I don't know, it doesn't say. Wherever there is a relationship of love of Godhead, its natural symptom is that the devotee does not think himself a devotee. Instead, he always thinks that he has not even a drop of love for Krishna. This is the humility, right? Manadena. He thinks himself the lowest. I have no devotion. We were discussing last night. We were having a little talk with some of the volunteers here at New Mayapur. Some questions came up about, different things. Anyway, I mentioned how Prabhupada, and you could probably think of many examples, but this is just one. How when Srila Prabhupada was at the Bhaktivedanta Manor talking with some nuns and priests, and they asked Prabhupada, are you the spiritual master of this movement? Prabhupada said, I'm not qualified. I'm trying to be the servant of this movement. I'm very unqualified. These young men and girls, boys and girls here, they are more qualified. I'm trying to serve them. He was talking like this. This is the actual mood of the devotee. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj used to see all of his disciples as his masters. They've been sent to help him as objects of his service, to serve them. The mood of a Vaishnava is always in this mood, how I can serve this person. What will inspire this person in their devotion service? My business is to serve. I have no qualification. This is the qualification, but their mood is like this. Absolute humility. There's not an element of false ego. Not an element. Or pride. Pride in, you could say, in devotional service, in one sense, is an element, it's another aspect there. And it's very proud of glorifying Krishna, or glorifying devotees, or glorifying the process of devotional service. But it's a pure pride. It's not based upon one's own position, one's own, trying to get improve one's own conditional position in the eyes of others. Not at all. I'm proud of the opportunity to associate with selfless, pure devotional service. A different thing altogether. Prabhupada has a purport to this verse here, which is related. It's sometimes going into another subject, you could say, but it's related. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that persons who are actually very poor because they possess not even a drop of love of Godhead or pure devotional service, falsely advertise themselves as great devotees, although they cannot at any time relish the transcendental bliss of devotional service. A class of so-called devotees known as Prakrita Sahajiyas sometimes display devotional symptoms to exhibit their good fortune. Imitation. It may not be a class known as Prakriti Sahajas. It could be any of us. We're trying to put it over that we're right, that we're good, that we're right. Justifying it by whipping a verse out of nowhere, justifying our independent perspectives, etc. Not knowing the actual context of either the verse or Prabhupada said somewhere, or I heard Swamiji say something or another, or my grandmother told me, or whatever point of authority we may refer to justify our behavior may not exactly be correct. It's not just literally the group called the Apasadanta, the group called Prakriti Sahajas, those who deviated, which is pretty clear to see. That type of mentality may be within us too. Even though we're not Prakriti Sahajas, we're Bhaktas. We're on the path of pure devotional service, Prabhu. We're not Apasadanta, we're following the right Siddhanta. But we're still, in many cases, imposing the mentality of the deviant groups in our own life. A class of so-called devotees known as Prakriti. They are pretending, however, because these devotional features are only external. And to a certain extent, we do experience this external. We like to think what people think of me when I'm doing this and that. We try to do it in such a way that it sounds good, at least to me it sounds good. I don't know what others think, and if they don't think it sounds good, then there's something wrong with them. And we sometimes think like that. And different types of varieties of this mentality. And the Prakriti Sahajas exhibit these symptoms to advertise their so-called advancement in love of Krishna. But instead of praising the Prakriti Sahajas for their symptoms of transcendental ecstasies, pure devotees do not like to associate with them. If you associate, you develop the same mood. It's happened in ISKCON. In the 70s, Prabhupada had to quash it. Devotees were trying to imitate prematurely, totally prematurely, the behavior of advanced devotees and putting themselves aside as if now I'm more advanced. Another example of this is certain austerities that we perform. And there was a time in ISKCON and devotees were, on the Ekadashi, and there's nothing wrong with it, by the way, but if it's premature, it can be detrimental. They were fasting all day and night on Ekadashi, staying up all night on Ekadashi, chanting around japa, 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 or something they were chanting all night and day. And the next morning, it was like, that was it for the next day. You wouldn't see them all day the next day. All the maha from the previous day had suddenly disappeared into a cupboard somewhere. It was all gone into their tummies the next day in some cases. And you ask any servant, no, tell Prabhu, I've got to recover from yesterday. I've got to take extra rest and eat more today. And by the way, how many rounds did you chant yesterday, Prabhu? Oh, you didn't do 108. Oh, never mind, Prabhu. Maybe you can keep trying. Keep trying. If not, one doesn't advertise one's austerities. You lose all the benefit from them. And it's not like something, oh, never mind. Keep trying. Maybe you'll come to 160, 190 rounds one day. I did it yesterday. How many rounds did you chant, Prabhu? Oh, 64. Oh, very good. Well done. Keep going. Keep trying. We'll get there. This is not devotional service. This is a reflection, but it's not devotional service. Devotional service is in the mood of Trnad Pisa Nichena, Doror Pisa Hishnina. Anyways, it's a click of this mentality of Prakriti Sahaja mentality of artificially putting one by some external show. One thinks oneself in advanced devotee. The way we dress, the austerities that we seem to undertake, our knowledge, look how he's offering art. Ooh, look at that design he's doing. He's offering the flower to Krishna. My word, he must be a very advanced pujari. Look at that. How eloquent they are. Ooh. Okay, there may be, but it doesn't necessitate that that's a sign of advancement in devotional service. We should do the best we can. But it doesn't matter. You may be a professional, seamstress, and you're using that in the service of Krishna, which is fantastic. But that doesn't automatically make one eligible to be a pure devotee of the Lord. You may be beautiful. Krishna accepts the beauty of our service, But the attitude of our service is what has to be seen. That also has to be there. The attitude in which we work, not just the work itself. Both go along, but the work should help us to develop and cultivate a pure attitude, a humble, tolerant, respectful attitude, not pride. If it's developing pride and anger and envy and whatever else, something's wrong. Something's wrong. We have to look and find what is it that's wrong. It is not advisable to equate the Prakriti Sahajas with pure devotees. We have to be careful how we associate with such mentality. When one is actually advanced in ecstatic love for Krishna, he does not try to advertise himself. Instead, he endeavors more and more to render service to the Lord in a humble mood. The Prakriti Sahajas sometimes criticize pure devotees by calling them philosophers, learned scholars, knowers of the truth, minute observers, but not devotees. Because they appear to be working externally, all these things, applying rules and regulations and so on. And of course we are. We don't deny that. We're not pure devotees. But we're following the path which the pure devotees give, the path which can, if we apply it properly, in a humble mood, and more developing a humble mood, at least accepting it. That's humility, that we accept, I don't know, therefore I follow the path of the pure devotees. We may not be manifested absolute humility, but that's at our stage is the stage of humility. We're accepting, I do not know, therefore please guide me. That's how Bhagavad Gita begins. And we tolerate inconveniences. Okay, we may not be able to tolerate everything, but we begin to tolerate the service of the pure devotee, service of Krishna, higher purposes. On the other hand, they depict themselves as the most advanced, transcendently blissful devotees, deeply absorbed in devotional service and mad to taste transcendental metals. This is the Prakriti Sahajas. They also describe themselves as the most advanced devotees in spontaneous love, as knowers of transcendental mellows, as the topmost devotees in conjugal love of Krishna, and so on. Not actually knowing the transcendental nature of love of God, they accept their material emotions to be indicative of advancement. In this way, they pollute the process of devotional service. To try to become writers of Vaishnava literature, they introduce their material conceptions of life into pure devotional service. Because of their material conceptions, they advertise themselves as knowers of transcendental mellows, but they do not understand the transcendental nature of devotional service. Hare Krishna. End of purport. And their time is moving on. It's 11:30. So, Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Anyone still there? Any questions or comments? Just see if anyone's still there. Oh, yeah, there's still a few kind souls who are giving your association to this deviant. Hare Krishna. I like Sudama Vipra's page, picture on his, I don't know what you call it, box here. Very nice one. Come and have a look at it. See what he's got on his screen. Look at that. It's beautiful. Oh, he quickly changed it. Hare Krishna. I don't know if anyone else could see it. So it looked like a teddy bear or something. I don't know. I hope you haven't changed species of life. Fortunate teddy bear. Hey, there you are. I can see him now in Singapore. He's put another picture on the screen saying his Dandavat. Okay. Hare Krishna. Any questions, please? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I can chant till till some questions come. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. From our dear Goridas in York. Hey Goridas, we have a super wonderful young lady from York staying with us here in New York. He's a very wonderful soul. And I'm sure when they go back there, you'll meet them. They're so into it. And very humble soul, young lady, and from a good background. Is in a nice village near York. Right at the foot of the hill, the Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and he marched them down again. And she lives right at the bottom of that hill, so she told me. That's a saying from York. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Any tips and advice for avoiding mechanical chanting? Oh, great. I'm gonna. Yes, there are many tips, but we were gonna take that to the next session. I can just say there are many. Association, of course, is very important in this regard. But really, it's the subject matter of another session, maybe next or the one after, I don't know, but something down the line of how we can come from the inattentive, mechanical, mindless chanting, whatever you want to call it, or just, fitting it in left, right, and center, or whenever there's a minute between the television programs that we're watching, or during the programs, or while we're driving our car down the highway, or whether we're on the internet at the same time. We're taking our lunch. We're eating with our left hand. We've got our japa bead in the right hand, and we're on the internet all at the same time. Or whatever it is. All these are different, dreadfully deviant forms of, let's say deviant, but offensive forms of, even externally, what to speak of the attitude of chanting. So there are unlimited tips, if you want to call it that, or unlimited ways of helping us to get free of this diseased condition of so-called devotional service, unlimited ways. But really, we'd like to leave it to another session. The first thing is what you've just written there is a desire. Everything is based upon desire. If we don't have the desire, not much is going to happen. It's going to take a long time before we get that realization. When we realize it, when we start to develop the desire to understand, wait a minute, maybe there is something I could do better. Maybe I need to inquire. Maybe I need to be a little humble here. Or maybe I need to reveal my heart a little bit. Instead of just covering it over in different ways. We don't even talk about it sometimes. Sitting with devotees. Now, I'll just give one here. Sitting with devotees, who are not just sitting together and talking about anything that comes to our mind. Sitting with devotees and actually asking, how can we improve our hearing and chanting? How can we do this? I don't know, Prabhu. That's a good question. No, Prabhu, I don't know either. It's it's important, isn't it? I think so. Well, nobody seems to have it. Well, maybe what we could do is we could get together once a week and just hear and chant. Nothing else. Let's just try to chant together. Just try to chant together. That's a start. Instead of like, do this. Prabhu, can you stir the pot? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do 101 things at once, please? We're in a rush. Prabhu, can we chant? You can do it while you chant, while you're doing the pots or whatever. Fine. In one sense, it may be a stage. But at some point we think, wait a minute. Maybe, if the Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan is the only saving grace, maybe I have to look at saving myself as well. Let me think now. More emphasis on hearing and chanting the holy name. That's the start. Huh? Maybe there's somebody I can sit and chant with, or listen to online, or something. If you can't go anywhere. If you're in England, you can't have anyone except for 2 family members in your home at one time, or some crazy thing. But whatever it is, we can have online japa or something online, something. Get some association, become a little more serious. Hare Krishna, Krishna. Just try to hear one mantra. Burijan Prabhu Sachinanda Maharaj used to say, don't try to do too much at once. Just try to hear one mantra. Try to hear one mantra. Or even if you can't do that one word, try to hear something. As I was reading this morning, Prabhupada was saying, One devotee was saying, but what about the mind travel? So what the mind got to do it? Just hear the sound of the name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. We can say there's not an iota of love involved. It's just mechanical, we can say. But it's not the same as mindless. We're trying to hear, we're having some faith that if I just hear the sound of the name, it means our faith is increasing. We have faith that the name is, we may not even have some bundle of understanding this is Krishna, but we have faith in this process. If I just hear the name, all things and everything becomes possible. Let me put my faith in that process of hearing the name. And then Krishna reciprocates. He reciprocates unlimitedly depending on how much faith we have. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. We put our faith. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We may not be thinking, we may not have the mood, oh Krishna, I surrender to you, I'm a wretch. We may not be thinking like that. We're just thinking, Prabhupada has given us the prophet. I just want to put my faith in this. Give our hearts to it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna instead of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. What's on the telly tonight? Hare Rama. What's the weather like today? How many coronaviruses today? Hare Krishna, Hare. How many? Oh boy, they've gone ahead. They're ahead of the league. They've gone in front now. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Oh boy, I heard that Auntie Flo's got it. Oh God, no. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Poor Auntie. What to do? I don't get it. Hare Krishna, better stay indoors. Hare Krishna, well, what are we going to do today? I don't know. It's getting really boring around here. Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Ram, Hare Krishna. God, thank God I finished my 16 rounds. What are we going to do now then? Let's see what's on. Let's see what to watch. It's like you're not going to get very far. I'm sorry to say, but we may be able to help each other a little bit. Maybe to help each other a little bit. I'm trying to become a little bit more attentive to hearing the sound. At least that much at this stage. It may be an immature stage of love of Godhead, but it's the beginning. Our faith is beginning to be posed in the holy name, not in everything else, and just seeing the holy name something to get rid of as quick as we can, finish it off. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said the sure sign of offensive chanting is we think, thank God I finished my rounds. Or even we don't say thank God. We may say, finished my rounds at last. We put the beads away and search for them the next day, not remembering where we put them. We find them in the bed under the sheets of the bed eventually. We fell asleep trying to finish our rounds. But whatever it is, we never finish our rounds. Never. We try to chant Hare Krishna, try as best we can to at least hear one mantra. And then take the next one as it comes. The mind will go into another universe, we come back again. Wherever the mind wanders, bring it back. Holy name, Hare Krishna. This is Krishna. Krishna's here. Associate with Krishna. Associate. Number 2. Working people like us. Yes, I'm not a working person. It's the same question, I think. Yeah, I think it's the same question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like the same question. So the next session, we'll see if we have any we're still able, we'll carry on. Tolerate protection of devotees. It's a big subject matter. To what stage should we tolerate in regard when it comes to protection of devotees? Well, that's another thing. We saw Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wasn't very tolerant when he saw Nityananda being severely offended by Madai. That's another thing. We've been talking on our own account. When it comes to the account of others, that's a different thing. Of course, again, it may not be very mature, but the principle of not tolerating when another devotee is offended is good. How it's executed, that may be a little sensitive sometimes. Because we have to see how much our own motivation is involved. how much is pure and how much is not pure. But the principle is good. We don't tolerate. When another devotee is offended, we do not tolerate. We do not tolerate. But one time when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj was with some disciples, they were talking about this subject matter. When we see people who are, offensive to devotees and so on, do we tolerate? And I said, no, we don't tolerate anyone who's offensive to Vaishnavas. But as they say, charity starts at home. How we don't tolerate, Prabhupada's Shastras give directions. We may, first of all, try to cut the tongue out. If you're a Kshatriya, you may cut more than the tongue. But in other words, stop them from criticizing or misspeaking or whatever it is. But you may not be able to do that. So the second thing is we're supposed to give up our lives. And we don't do that, Prabhupada said, because there'd be none of us left if we did that. We'd all have to give up our lives because you hear it every day. You see it every day. The third one is you avoid the association. As we just heard with the Prakriti Sahijas, we keep away. We don't associate. Now, in the case of a situation where someone's being actually mistreated by another devotee, we have to act. If we're wrong, we're wrong. But the principle is we have to act. We'll go, if we can't do anything or we're not in a position to do anything, we can quickly go for help, for either correcting ourselves or correcting the situation. So that's a big subject, and devotee care in our movement is a big subject matter. You can read many, many different angles of how that applies in so many ways. That's unlimited. It applies to every circumstance. But I'm going back to Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's answer. And Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, yes, we don't tolerate it. It has to be dealt with. But for when someone's being offensive. But first, he said, we have to see who is the offender. And he said, when I look at my own self, I find no greater offender than myself. So to whom do I become angry? To whom do I exercise intolerance? We tolerate all our own nonsense and don't tolerate a thing from anyone else. This is sometimes a tendency. At first, we have to see our own hearts. Then it becomes clear. Otherwise, we do our best. And if we don't know, we inquire for those who do know or know better than we know. We have a duty in life, and that may have to be executed even if we're not so expert in discrimination or application. But we still have to do our duty. And we're not, in principle, we're not wrong. We may not be, so effective either. But the primary thing is we have to see our own hearts and see that there is offensive mentality. There's not, there is offensive mentality in our own heart. If we really want to be a well-wisher or useful in the service of others, we have to start there as well, along with doing our best to perform our duty in life. The tendency is to think ourselves, Messiah or something. We're not. We're just fallen, offensive creatures, trying to wake up, trying to associate with the pure souls. Obviously, we have to use common sense, especially if it's a act of violence to children, an act of violence to women, an act of violence to anyone, come to that. If it's within our means, whether it's physical or emotional or mental, we have to try to do something. Helpless we may be, but the mentality has to be there. We should pray or go to someone who can help or whatever it is if we're so helpless. Next one. Thank you for that. How to see every situation arranged by Krishna. To purify my consciousness or rebellious mentality. As lack of this understanding results in disturbing my mind, results in inattentive devotional service, although I continue my service, but in back and struggle continuous for many days. Why this situation? Person acting in such a manner. Humbly request, can you please guide? Well, it's all due to our past experiences, our past lifetimes, and present consequent false ego, which dictates our consciousness of how our mind works. And the mind being colored and covered by numerous pictures from the past, numerous intelligence seeing a numerous permutations and combinations of what will happen if this does this and this does it, and if I behave like, on and on the confusion goes, and we get covered over because of just because we're still identifying ourselves with this program. We're kind of programmed. We're like programmed to behave in such and such a way and to react in such a way to certain circumstances. Living entity is basically programmed, just like a computer is programmed, and so on and so forth. So how to change that program? That's the question. It's a big question. I mean, you could say it really goes back to the whole idea of, we think with this body, and this body is mine, and this is mine, and that's mine, and so on and so forth. All based on that principle. So that we haven't yet really understood or applied at least some Bandhagyan basic principles of understanding I'm not this body, and this is not mine, and I'm not this mind either, by the way, is the way I see things may not be the correct way of seeing things. That's why we have to read Prabhupada's books very carefully. We may not be able to read it at the beginning. We're reading, but we're not really hearing. We have to regularly, again and again, hear. Gradually, the message will get through. But the effectual nature of that reading or hearing from the Shastra, bona fide Shastra, as we hear in the association of others. The same thing with japa. To hear the Shastras in the association of others and being open to be corrected. And our eyes will then begin to open. Our eyes are open. The darkness of ignorance, the spiritual master opens our eyes, which are blinded with the darkness of ignorance, with the transcendental light of knowledge. And that knowledge is there, but when you've got your eyes closed, it's pretty hard to see it. We're still blinded by our own false egotistical perceptions of the world. But Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, one who thinks that their reform of this world is in need of reform. No one can reform this world. It's we that need reforming, that our own perception of the world needs reforming. He said that happens by exposing ourselves. Just like we expose a film to the light, the film is blanked out. We expose ourselves to the transcendental sound vibration of Krishna Katha. Lack of hearing from the right source is the actual. And it may take time. We've got to become the mood of submissive hearing has to be developed. And that comes, usually in the beginning, it comes by Sushushosha Vidanasya Vasudeva Katarushi, by serving those devotees who are freed of all vice, great service is done. By such service, by the mercy of Krishna, the devotee, one develops an attraction for hearing the messages of Godhead. So practical devotional service, a little austerity has to be performed there, in the service of the pure devotees. Helps us to develop some inclination, some attraction, desire to hear and chant. But ultimately it has to be in the process of hearing and chanting, association of devotees, generally speaking, unless the spiritual master says otherwise, is pleasing the spiritual master, executing activities which please the spiritual master. Then Krishna is pleased, and he removes these coverings from our hearts. Krishna is the one who removes the coverings. It's not the process itself. The process, when executed with faith by the devotee, evokes the mercy of Krishna. And he cleanses the heart of whatever is obstacle to our path of devotion. Next one. I think that's it. I think that's it. Fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It's all around, isn't it? Proper association on different levels. Why did Prabhupada come to the world? Why did he come to the West? Why did he go to America? Why did he go to Australia, England, France? Why did he go to Malaysia, Philippines? Why did he go to all these Fiji, New Zealand? Why did he go to all these places? Germany, Holland. To so many places. Why? To give Krishna's association. Hare Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gaur Premanandi Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. So, Hare Bo, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Lecture of flower में
Hare Krishna.
Ki jai.
Jai.
Hare
Emo.
Hare Bo, Janananda. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Bo.
Hare Bo.
Hare
इसके बारे में नोट्स भी लिखना है। इसके बारे में आपको डायग्राम या रियल वॉटएवर भी दिखा के आपको को एक्सप्लेन करना है।
Haribo.
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 Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
इसका आवाज नहीं आ रही बेटा, बोलिए।
So Premanande.
Haribo.
इसके साथ आपको नोट्स